Warm greetings. Welcome to today's session of Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water. This session is conducted with the support of Water Resources Council of the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and in collaboration with W4W Foundation. My name is Mansi Bal Bhargav and I'm the host for today. I'm also holding the current position of National President of the Wiki Water Resource Council and the founder director of W4W Foundation. We are glad to start this conversation, namely Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water, which we colloquially call as Blue Lips. The conversation is aimed to share the worries and the wisdom by the woman for the woman of the woman in the water sector. In here, we hope to learn about the water endeavors of the woman in a regular, disciplined manner like a master class. In these sessions, we are actually more than 60 sessions in Monday Munching. And in these sessions, we have had senior emeritus professors and super seniors as well to talk about their water journey. And we have also had quite a number of young water scholars, water enthusiasts, and which I personally call as water workers, who also like to share their journeys and opportunities and challenges of being a woman in the sector. Today in this session, we are here to listen and know more about Monzima Haque and Tabeer Riaz, who are the members of South Asia Young Women in Water. And welcome, girls. Welcome to the Monday Munching and Musing session. We are really excited to have you in our session and eager to hear from and learn from you. Before I invite you to speak a little bit more about the session, let me just quickly say a line about each one of you and then invite you to really elaborate your current endeavors and all. Monzima Haque is a doctoral candidate at the School of International Services, American University, Washington, D.C., USA. She received her MA in International Affairs and Development from India School of International Affairs at George Washington University at Washington as again. Then we have Tabeer Riaz, who holds a master's degree in agricultural economics and management from the Swedish University of Agricultural Science in Sweden. During her master's, she actually worked on the research investigating the behavioral patterns related to sustainable water resource management with a specific focus on developing countries. So welcome, girls, and super excited to really hear about you. So let me just start with the same order as I have introduced. So Monzima, little bit more about you and importantly highlighting when did you realize that you would love to be in this zone of, water and what I call normally is you would love to be wet, remain wet for rest of your lives. When did it click your head that you belong here? Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mansi. Just to introduce myself at the outset, I am a doctoral researcher at American University right now, and
please go ahead.
Thank you. And my research focuses on how transboundary river basin institutions can be better managed to take into consideration the different levels of analysis, which basically is about, we have been seeing in Asia a lot of the time, the local communities have different desires of managing the rivers by which they have been living for so long, right? But at the same time, there are different needs for the region, there are different needs for the globe. So I would say technically my interest in water came very late. Yes, I have grown up in a very water scarce neighborhood in Dhaka city. But then something that really stick to my memory was when during a flash flood that happened in Dhaka, my family was going through water scarcity, and there was no water that we could use for the drinking purposes for days. After that flash flood ended, my father and people in the colony decided to add more groundwater access to our neighborhood. What that led to is scarcity for the neighboring region. And that was the first time I realized that, you know, local management of water resources is something that we really need. But at the same time, if it's not managed well nationally, there is going to be crisis even among localities. And that brings us to the question of, you know, like different levels of analysis, how the needs of locals can have implications for the greater needs that's there among a specific country. And then going beyond that, thinking about a river basin, there are several countries that are sharing a basin, and how do we manage the different needs of, you know, different water users, different countries. And all of these things brought me into my training, where I have always been trained in international relations, so I look into more of the policy and transboundary policy aspect of it. I'm also an assistant professor at University of Dhaka in international relations department, and after I joined, I actually introduced a course on hydropolitics at our department. So that was one of the first master's level courses that I brought in, because it was very much influenced by my research experiences, which was of course influenced by my early childhood experience, but later flourished through my entry into the policy world when I was doing my master's at George Washington University. And right now I'm back to working on water issues, basically looking into how we can better nest all of these different needs of different levels of analysis in existing river basin institutions. So I will stop there. We can talk more about my experiences and my journey, but broadly, it's very much, you know, my childhood experiences, my training, and then my interest and understanding of, you know, everything needs to come together that made me the water worker that you were talking about.
Thank you, Monzima. Tabeer, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Tabeer?
Yes, completely.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you had already introduced myself, so I just graduated from Swedish University of Agriculture Sciences, and from there I can start. It's the agriculture thing. So my interest and the background comes from the water resource management in the agriculture. So that's where, when after my graduation back in Pakistan, I jumped into a job sector and I joined, and my basic research focus was on water resource management in the agriculture sector, because my father was also from the agriculture sector. So that's where I have found myself associated with water. And then we came across a project that was focused on nature-based agriculture. So there we learned how the economics works when we have too little water, too little water, too much water. And then we worked around the economics around the water, and also taking in account the climate challenges. So that was the time when I came very close to the water. Like, okay, so water has such a significant role to play when we talk about agriculture, and especially I belong to a country where agriculture is of like at most importance, and we also have like water related issues whenever it comes to agriculture or other water related issues, like even the quality of water, drinking water, and so many. But then I decided to move to Sweden, and the decision that I took a degree in agriculture economics is based on the experience that I had back in Pakistan. So after doing that, and I also got the opportunity to go to World Water Week in Stockholm. So that's where it uh, reached the height, the water, like the passion for water, where I meet amazing colleagues from South Asia. So then we can maybe talk in detail about the journey of SAYWiW, how we founded this. But that's how I come with a background in water resource management, and then coming here and then meeting some super amazing colleagues. And then I think I'm much more passionate about water than I used to be.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Meghna, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more about what you are doing, and especially when did you realize that you belong in the water sector and you would like to stay wet for rest of your career? Over to you, Meghna.
Yes, thank you so much, and apologies for the delay. It's unbelievable for me that in 2024, I'm struggling for internet connection, and finally I found myself a place where I'm literally sitting in heat without fan and anything, because if I switch on the fan, the internet goes away.
Oh,
very, very weird. So
let's yeah.
Yeah, yes, first of all, apologies for the delay. And yeah, if I have to start my water journey, Basically, I grew up in a very semi-arid region. There's a small town in Madhya Pradesh called Jhabua, which is at the border of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. So I basically was born and brought up there, and since I was since a very my maternal grandparents are in Kolkata. So from a very small age, I observed this stark contrast around availability of water and how it shapes the habits of people. Because given that I was in the semi-arid region, water was anyway scarce. Naturally, it was scarce. So people used to value it very much. And then when I would come for my summer vacations, my father used to just pack us up and send us to, because water situation used to get really bad there. So he used to send us to place. And here I used to see if there is water flowing from a tap, nobody would bother, and there was excess wastage of water, which I usually did not used to see back home. So I realized that because there is no dearth of water in this geography. People do not actually value water, and it's sort of used to really pester me so much, because from a very small age, I have seen people struggling for water. My mother used to literally travel. There was a hand pump a kilometer away from, and my father has been a class 1 officer. Despite that, my mom used to travel a kilometer. So it did not matter that my father was in a service class or he was an officer, my mother still had to struggle for water. So I have, from a very small age, I have seen that even if you have the capacity to buy, or if you have the financial capacity, natural resources are something that will humble you down, and is the first, the frontline warriors are always the women who suffer so much. So these are very small observations that I sort of was somehow aware of from a very small age. And even till date, if I'm sleeping and if I can hear water falling, is sort of is a trauma trigger for me. I cannot sleep if there is a tap leaking or something. I absolutely cannot sleep. I cannot sleep to the sound of water being wasted. So all these things actually led me to decide that I want to do something. So when I pursued my master's, I studied from Terry University in Delhi. I did my MSc in Environmental Studies and Resource Management. But given the course of the structure was such that I had the freedom of choose a lot of subjects by myself, and I decided to go for water because that was the one that I understood the best. And because I have lived through a lot of varied region, I had lived in Jhabua, which was semi-arid. Then I moved to Jabalpur, which was on the banks of River Narmada, and I saw how the habits of people change, how the availability of water actually changes the entire demography and everything in the society. So I felt like this is the most I understand well. And that was when I decided to work in the water sector, and I studied water, I worked in water, I'm still in water. And I think I don't understand, I might continue in this sector itself because this is what I have known forever in my life. And like I always say that I was named after a river in Bangladesh because my father would tell us that prior to the partition, the ancestral village that we used to have, it was on the rivers of on the banks of River Meghna. So my entire existence is around water. So this is going to stay forever.
Very well put. So let me just ask you about the wonderful association you girls are trying to establish across Asia, and the whole conceptualization and ideation, and how you plan to operationalize it in the longer run. So maybe you can take turns as we did from the beginning. So Monzima, Tabeer, and then Meghna. Or we can reverse the
I think it's best to reverse the turn because Meghna and Tabeer, are the primary founders of the association.
So we reverse the order. Okay, we start with Meghna and we try to keep it very short and all because there are some wonderful questions coming up. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. So I think Tabeer has already mentioned that we we met at the World Water Week last year. And the idea was actually to give a platform where, because currently there are no platforms for South Asian young women water professionals to actually, have even sort of a discussions or a peer-to-peer knowledge exchange. So the idea basically was just to have sort of an informal network. But the kind of response that we have received is what has led us to give it a more formal structure. And we continue to do so. We are continuing to partner with well-known entities, as well as seeking guidance from experts like you in how we can fulfill the demand, which is very much there present within the water sector in South Asian region. And this is going to be a long-term process, I believe. We have just started, and we plan to be here for the longer run. And I think that is all I can say for now. If Tabeer wants to add anything, Tabeer.
Wonderful. I am sure you are going to be here for longer run, and kudos to South Asia Young Women in Water. And I really like the name you have really decided, because it's very direct and well put, that we are not much represented. I mean, we are struggling even after 30 years to have a better representation. So it's good now start by you people at a younger age. I mean, for us to realize it, it took 20 years that there is a serious problem. Over to you, Tabeer.
Yeah, thank you, Meghna. You have already explained, so I cannot, because it's the same thing, so I can only just add to it. So it's like, yeah, as you mentioned, like it's the first one, if we talk about South Asian young women in water, and the exposure that we got during the World Water Week was so surprising, especially for me, from being Pakistan. I couldn't see anyone from Pakistan. So that is the moment that I was like totally invested in it, that this is what we needed. So here we are, and we are like looking forward to have like a much more stronger presence. And also one thing that I would love to mention is that it was the language that connected us. So it was in a room where we connected. So that was due to the South Asian region, the beauty of the region, that we can understand each other's local language. So that comes the point. So I think it would be good that we know each other's language, we can understand each other's emotion and the emotions we have for the water. So that's the point where we can connect more beautifully as compared to with other people working on the water sector. And we are here together. And that's it, because she has already mentioned that how we connected and what we are looking to do.
Let me just tweak this question a little bit further to ask you, Monzima, because when you set up such kind of association, there are some, mission, vision, or some objectives to really go for, or maybe some ideas where you think what to do with this network. So did you, in this whole formative years, did you discuss those things?
We typically come together to discuss how we can do one thing, which I think is the most important part of the conversation through this network, which is how we can encourage young people to take an interest on the issue of water. Because for the past few years, based off of my experience in the research sector, apart from certain organizations that focus on specific water-related issues, for example, how we can ensure water sanitation, how we can ensure access to water in the agriculture, we're not seeing enough of young people taking an interest on water issue at a broad level. So the way I bumped into this organization is basically the same thing that Meghna mentioned. So they decided to come together because there was no such platform for South Asian women to share their experiences and their association with water, and how culturally water is just so important for us, right? But so I was doing my research, and then I was working with Environmental Peace Building Association, and through that network I was introduced to different water networks around the world. For example, for MENA region, where they talk about Nile and the associations around Nile, they talk about Mekong, and all of these associations exist, but there is no such association for South Asia. So actually at the start of this year, I was actually thinking about, I probably should think to create a women's network in Asia around water. And then the call for Stockholm World Water Week opened, and I was searching through LinkedIn, and I actually bumped into this fascinating network. And I was so excited to find that we already have a network that probably, we can amplify and get more young people to share their voice through this network. Just during our last meeting, we were talking about how we can bring together youth and experts in a platform, organize a webinar around that, and share knowledges that already exist. Because I know there are so many water experts who want to, channel and convey the knowledge that they have accumulated over the years, be it diplomat, be it, experts. And young people are probably, not need to be informed about those knowledges that exist if they want to take water diplomacy forward, if they want to take water knowledges forward. So I think for me, at least, the vision that we have for this network is basically to get more and more young people take an interest on the issue of water at different levels, and then really be a repository of knowledge that the water experts hold, be it in the form of policy briefing, be it in the form of webinar, be it in the form of associations that already exist and learn from their knowledges. But we want to be a place where people can come and learn about and take an interest in something that is so core to our existence, water.
Thank you. Let me just go to the second round of question, which is more about the very idea of presence and participation of women. We know when we talk about women, it is, and water, of course, it is always looked from a perspective of the vulnerable woman, as in a patriarchal society, it is already set, in stone, unfortunately, that woman bears the responsibility to ensure water for the family. So that image gets, I think, further enhanced to the idea of this responsibility getting into the idea of vulnerability. So whenever the water managers are sitting around and they are talking about, and often they are men, of course, needless to say that, and as I said, after 3 decades, I also see that still a men's world. What is in your opinion? Because today it's wonderfully you people are representing 3 different regions from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and India. What in your little career you have realized why women presence and participation in the decision making is lesser? What are the reasons you think? I mean, it can be as naive as your understanding goes, but it can be very serious also. There must be, some I think preconceived ideas about why are not there, and probably you have come across the reasons through literature why women presence and participation is so less. By the way, when you look through into the organizations, you find many women out there. And that's our finding from our work in Wiki Water Resource Council. But I'm more interested to learn from all 3 of you. And we will again change the sequence, and that makes it richer. So we start now with Monzima, then Tabeer, and Meghna.
Thank you. Actually, in Bangladesh, in my experience, there are so many women who are present in the policy-making arena. I'm actually fascinated and very happy about women presence. My bigger concern is actually in Bangladesh, the youth representation, the female youth representation around water, because I think there is a sort of transition that's happening in the new generation where people are very much drawn to working in field that gives them quick money. I don't know if it's like very relevant, but yes, employability, and for that reason, I'm seeing less and less young women, female representation in the water sector. But I think for like a lot of work, for example, in Action Aid, in IUCN, in Water Aid, I have seen women leadership. Fascinating women leadership. And when I was working with IUCN, I went down in riverbank erosion vulnerable areas. And something that was fascinating to me is like how women portrayal of vulnerability is just one side of the story, because I interviewed a lot of women who were vulnerable to riverbank erosion. And when you ask them why you are not moving away from all of these areas, even though these are vulnerable areas, their response was because it provides us with a network. So we really need to understand that rivers provide women with a sort of socialization network. When they go out to clean their clothes, when they're the primary collector of water. So when they go out, this is basically a network of women sharing their plights, sharing their sorrows, sharing their happiness. So women's connection with water is just so deep and so powerful that I think we need to really recognize that women are just not vulnerable beings who are, being vulnerable to water and access to water, but they are also powerful agents who protect water and who water gives them the livelihood and more than that. So I think to some extent, I'm basically very happy and proud of women representation we have in the policymaking space. But of course, we need to have more representation, more voice, because it's just so intimately connected with female life and livelihood.
And I think you raised a very important point about youth, because in India also I'm often getting concerned when I look at some of the few water institutes which have been opened in some prestigious schools, one being Terry itself. But some of them are actually closing near to closure because they are not getting enough admissions. And it goes back to the employability. But let's hear Tabeer. How is it doing in Pakistan now? Women representation, youth representation, what is it?
Yeah, actually, as we share the same context, the region, so it is more or
Yes.
less same as Monzima mentioned about Bangladesh. So not major difference, but the presence of women in the water sector is mainly because it is very much related to the water is perceived as a technical sector. Like we come up with engineering solutions. So instead of making it a societal issue, and as we know, like women are more disappropriately affected through this, like water scarcity. So we never heard that men go and they bring water for the family. No, I haven't heard this in my whole life. So this is the women's responsibility. So they are affected most, but still, like these are the mindset that we have in the region, and specifically the vulnerable communities who are living in the remote areas and rural areas. So they have that kind of mindset. But I'm not mentioning that we don't have enough young talent or the professionals working in the water sector. So it's just about the mindset that is not even in the region, rural areas, but also on the upper level when they are making the policies. So the people have that kind of mindset. They have societal barriers, so they don't give movement that space that is much more needed. Though there is presence, but it is less, and we need more. We need to make it like women are affected most, so they are responsible for most of the water related issues, so they should be given more power. So with inclusion, I think it has been observed, with research proves that I think with the participation of women in the decision making, we can have like more sustainable solutions to the water related issues. So
Oh,
it's the same
absolutely.
thing across the region. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no two doubts about it. But I
Yeah.
would still like to understand the nuance of it in the pretext of this whole absence of women in the main decision-making roles and all. Do you think the documentation and dissemination about the efforts which women leaders or key women professionals makes a difference? Because I mean, through my research and all, we have realized that many women who are doing wonderful work, their work have not been documented, and their work have not been appreciated at large, so that people come to know that these are water experts, unlike the way the work by men anyway gets more limelight. It's a patriarchal problem, and I'm always saying water problems are more patriarchal problem. It's a disease we carry in the region. But just to understand from you, because in your age group, I see the very idea of social media, the very idea of documentation and expressing your thoughts to the larger audience, to the society, is making a huge difference. So what is your take on these this aspect? Just quickly, if you think that it matters, or no, it doesn't matter much, you have to keep working.
No, it does matter, and it has been the case throughout, like in my life. I haven't, like, we have experienced this thing that how it is not well documented, and how the women voices are not heard when we go to the decision making table. But now I have seen, like now, because of the SAYWiW, I was in contact with so many relevant people, but because of the SAYWiW, now I know much more deeper, like what exactly is happening and what exactly our youth is doing. So now I think the pattern is changing, especially due to the social media. Now, even if it is not well documented, we have enough platforms to raise our voices, to advocate, and to amplify our like voices, and we can support each other. So now I think the trend is changing, and we are just part of that trend changers to
Yes,
amplify
of
the
course.
voices of the women and to document every single decision that we are taking in the water sector.
No,
Yeah.
definitely. And I see that this change is going to bring a lot of attitudinal change, even among the senior men and women. I mean, it's both at the senior level that we have to look at things very differently. And especially the fact that women bring alternatives, alternate ways of doing things. And you rightly mentioned about coming up with more sustainable solutions. And the kind of crisis we are really facing, I think we will have no choice than to listen to the other half of the country, or other half of the region. And rightly mentioned by Monzima that Bangladesh is faring better than, I think I must say, India and Pakistan in that matter, as far as women leadership is concerned, even in this sector. And Action Aid Director is a classic example of Farah Kabirapa is doing exceptionally well. I know her personally, so I bring her name here. And we also have Meenal Patole in Water Aid here in India, and she's doing exceptionally well. So we see, I'm giving these two names especially to come with the next question to you, which is about leadership. So one thing is being in the profession and being a professional in the sector and getting recognized or not recognized. But then when we talk about many professionals, and we know that leadership is a pyramidal situation, and also leadership is gender blind, and it should be gender blind and gender less for that matter. But there are certain traits or certain characteristics which people look up to for having a good leader. So what kind of characteristics you think a leader must inherit, or should really upskill themselves? How do you see leaders in your context? I mean, it may be any leader for that matter, but what exceptional characteristics they require to be seen as leaders amongst the masses? And I'm talking about in the water sector. You may give some references also, so that will be nice. Yeah. So we start with Tabeer this time and then go back to Monzima.
Yeah. So yeah, as we are mentioning, so we're talking about women leaders. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it can be any leader, to be honest, because we want to capture the characteristics a leader must have, so that we know that these characteristics, maybe they are inherent. I should not use the word genetic, but then much of the things can be learned, we can upskill ourselves. So because leadership is something which we should aspire for if we want to increase the participation and presence of women. Because we have to look up to somebody, no? When I was at your age and starting my career, I could not name other than two women in my country. And I would like to tell them that's about Vandana Shiva, it's about Sunita Narayan. Maybe if I have to go third, because I was not so much into water activism, I came to know about Meghna much later. So because we were looking for positive examples as the society projects people, that's also another problem. But later on, Medha Patkar became my role model after learning more about her. So there were very few role models to look up to,
Yeah, same. I think when it comes to, we have very few of them. But when it comes to leadership, so we have like a clear characteristics that a leader should possess, like a direction, like towards what exactly the common goal or strategy they have to achieve. So then I think that a leader can lead the whole group behind him or herself. And the alignment, the joint coordination of the resources and the activities, like how they are coming along. If we like we are the women organizations, if we are talking about women, so we are not going to keep the men behind. So I think even then we need a coordination between both of them. As you mentioned, like it should be a gender blind. So I think that is the best quality of even leader, to lead the whole group instead of being like just to take the man with him or herself and leaving the woman behind. And then the commitment, like to have this collective success in the future. So yeah, I believe like these qualities are the main qualities our leadership possess and take everyone. And the same goes for the leadership in the water sector. Like you have a very clear goal and the strategy, and in the changing climate, we have like a very clear picture what exactly we want to achieve in the water sector and how the things are changing. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I think apart from having a collective goal, to start with, we'll also have to talk about collective, concern or shared concern to achieve something out there. So Monzima, could please add on to Tabeer? Yeah.
So as you were saying, I was reminded of one of the very first classes that I had in my undergrads, that was Gender and IR, and it was taught by Professor Sohaila Nazneen. And she, in the very first class, gave us a very fascinating exercise, which was about write down different adjectives that define a man and a woman. And then at some point, you just realize that every adjective that you are talking about applies to both men and women. And when it comes to leaders, there is a tendency to think that men are supposed to be leaders, but then you see women leaders around the world and you realize how peaceful, how they're bringing peace to the world, and how they're bringing sustainable changes, that as Tabeer was talking about. And why is that? And I often ask myself, why is that? And I guess it all goes back to something that a personality trait that women has, which is something that I think a leader should have, being observant. You really have to be observant about what's happening in the society. You cannot isolate yourself from the ground, going back to the point that Meghna was talking about. And that's why she inherently possesses that leadership skill set, is she moves to a different place and she sees how water, a tap water is being wasted. And I oftentimes, I don't see that kind of observation power among men. And that's why bringing the other half of the sky, the way they put it, the other half of the sky in the decision-making table is just so significant, because women just have very different observations. They see the world very differently, and we need to harness the power of seeing the world very differently. So to me, leadership is very much about being observant of what's happening in the society and bringing your knowledge forth to make those observations a reality, to change what the social reality is based off of your observation. Something that I think is a bit problematic in South Asia when it comes to women is they are very shy, and they often try to hide themselves when it comes to portraying their effort and power and their skills. And I guess it's because it's a patriarchal society, right? When women becomes very vocal, many people don't like it, and women just have to, how feminism as a word has become a taboo in this part of the world, and it's so misperceived. It's so misunderstood what feminism is. It's about equal rights of every human being in this world, and how people just make it a taboo, right? You become a vocal person and you become a feminist, and there are so many celebrities around the world who go to safe side and start saying, oh, I'm not a feminist, I only believe in equal rights of women. Well, equal rights of women and equal rights of human is what feminism is about. So I guess there is this patriarchal society has given us some sort of understanding where women really wants to be more feminine, and their understanding of femininity comes from not adequately sharing the fascinating work that they're doing. Of course, the social media has now given women much more voice, and we need to keep harnessing that platform. We need to keep bringing forth more women through all of these platforms. And again, I think our platform is a space where we want to bring women who has fascinating experiences and give them a voice. And we need to keep doing that, because women just have fascinating observation power, and they can just really change the world for good, for better.
Wonderful. I think we all echo these aspects. And when you talk about leadership, and also you raise this point of alternate ways of looking at the world is extremely important. And I think that's what we bring on the table in a discussion. Otherwise, it's business as usual, which has been going for years. And despite the fact that there are blunders which are made, there are crises which are rising, there is no reflection, much reflection happening. So what are the corrective measures required? Because it's about the echoing of few people who have been doing things in certain way, they would like to do it in that way only. It's that comfort zone, the complacency of doing things in a particular way. So let me just move on to next question, because I see Meghna's network is really troubling her today. So maybe we will ask her to join next time, but I will return to her later. But let me ask a little bit of personal question here, as I see all of you as leaders of your own region by your own merits, and the fact that you see the potential of being in a network, and also the potential that there is a serious requirement of youth leaders. I just want to understand, because you are in your early career, how are you really planning your career in a way that you have a bit of your personal space, life, and then both of you are studying, and also do studies on time in a nice way and get good scores so that you can excel further and enhance also in your career, because employability definitely is an issue in the water sector. And I strongly believe that why not have good employment with good education, even though water sector is not allowing. Although we need to delimit the definition of employment itself, what is employment? And I personally see a job and work as two different things. And I think women look at work more seriously, and they are continuously doing. But how are you really looking at your personal space and your professional career, which has to take serious steps now, take some serious decisions, and the scope of leadership in the youth zone, because you will still require to move that ladder of 10-15 years to reach the place where you can say in the midlife and seniors, where after 20-30 years of work, anyway you are going to be established leaders and professionals. But today, what goes on in your head? Take it on from here. Tabeer, would you like to go on this question first?
Yeah, sure. So it's a very tricky question actually, because as women we have like a lot of responsibility. So we are already like struggling. As me being married and having a 4, 5 year kid, so it's already like I do have like a lot of responsibility. Then a professional career, then comes the SAYWiW and all this. But yeah, I'm very much hopeful, and we really want to have this. Achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves. Taking this, I think this is something that I'm going to take very serious in my life, as a professional growth as well. Like professionally, I want to establish a career in here as being part of SAYWiW, and to being possess the qualities of maybe a kind of leading this small platform, and to push the youth and to give them platform where they can, which we couldn't find in our times. Like it was not possible to have. There would be so many now, but at that time we didn't have that opportunity. So that's where I see that this is the thing that where I want to consume most of my time, and maybe I plan to do something with a PhD. Now relevant to now, I have two things to focus on. Earlier it was just water, now it comes gender and water, like women in water.
Very
So
good.
yeah, so it's a combination, but I'm like I see myself like that is what my professional life looks like now. Like it's mainly focused on women in water.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Monzima, I know you're already into your PhD, so, and it's a bad
Yes.
question to ask which stage is your PhD. It's a really bad question. So I'm going to keep that aside, but still, because it's a
Um,
very tricky time of the career, and also as a woman, it's a tricky time. Yeah.
yes, I think it's very.
Most of the dropouts in the women's career actually happen in this age where you girls are. So it's a really
Right.
right time to get good mentorship or good direction. Yeah.
Yes. So
Sorry.
I would say, going back to the point that you were referring to about mentorship, is I have been very fortunate to have excellent mentors in my life who understood the struggles that we often go through in terms of personal space and professional space. As you were asking this question, I was reminded of that triple burden of women, that, you know, women are expected to be the primary carer and also have a community role and also have like a material impact on the society. So about my personal issue, I have been medically diagnosed with depression when my father died, and I have lost both my parents. And I have been so fortunate. When I started my PhD, I was often going back and forth for therapy or for my depression. And my supervisor was so nice and understanding of the fact that he would oftentimes ask me, what do you need from me? Do you want to take leave of absence? Do you want to, you know, like take a step back and, you know, give yourself the time and space that you need to regain your energy and your focus? And this is my suggestion to like my students and youth of this era, that it's very common. We are living in an era where we're constantly bombarded with information. We're living in an era of overabundance of information, oversaturation of networks, and you really have to find something that interests you. And when you take the decision to make your work about something that you really love, making those connections becomes so much more easy. Just look at Tabeer, the example that she is talking about. Her interest is in water, and her experiences are in water. And as a woman, she has those observations that she needs. And then she has brought all of those experiences together to work and to, you know, focus in something that really interests her. So I think when you do that, the struggles, the tensions of, you know, employability and, you know, am I going to be able to sustain in the field where I am taking an interest right now becomes, you know, much more manageable. So number one, I would say, is everyone needs to take care of themselves, because this era is a very difficult era. If you need to step out of all the limelight and spotlight, take your time to do so, because the first thing is you have to take care of yourself. And when you take care of yourself, you can take care of the community. That's just so important. As a critical theorist, something that I always say, when you become a critical theorist, it's so difficult to be happy anymore, because you were seeing so many injustices around the world, and you just can't disassociate yourself, and you constantly blame yourself for all the bad things that are happening in the world and all the frustrations that you can't do anything about making those right. But at the same time, we need to keep ourselves healthy, both mentally and physically, and we need to take those space, and we need to deal with those tensions. And if those require at times to take a step back, I think that's legit. We should do it. But at the same time, we need to learn to balance these personal needs and professional space. And that's why we need mentors like you, who can, you know, help us through this journey. So the role of mentorship is critical to make sure that women can have their voice in a more systematic sort of way that we need for this world.
Oh, absolutely. There is no true doubt about, having a good mentor, but at the same time also having this confidence and clarity, and clarity that being vulnerable is fine. You know, accepting that I'm vulnerable and I seek some guidance is absolutely fine. And I think this was something where women could not handle in the earlier time. And as I was mentioning, this is a very critical age for women in career, and whether in water or not in water, it is the critical age, especially because the social changes, the physical changes that we all go through in this age. And on top of it, then when we self-impose an aspiration to do something, not only as a career, but also to be meaningful to life and to the society, you know, to see that we can be change makers in our own sectors, respective sectors. So just to understand from here a little bit further, before you really established the network here, I'm sure you were also part of some more associations in the college time, unions, and doing some kind of, leadership activities, or maybe realizing within yourself that, no, I'm the one who will always stand up for something wrong going on, or I have more clarity to take life in this direction or bring some change in the society. So before South Asia Young Women in Water and with South Asia Young Women in Water, do you see that these kind of platforms, these kind of associations and councils are useful for, yeah, especially for younger generation to be part of? And if so, how do you think they are useful? What do you think they bring to you as a professional? And what do you think you can offer to those kind of platforms, you know? So do you want to change the sequence of responding, or we can go again this way? Yeah,
No, I think it's totally fine. I can go first. Yeah,
go
if
ahead.
this is the sequence, yeah.
Yeah,
So
go
I
ahead.
think it's a two-way road. Like
Yes,
it's
of
not
course.
going, it is not going to benefit us, but it would, I think it would be more beneficial for the young people who will get attached with us. So it's not always about us, like we are five, the people, but we also get to interact with mentors like you and so many other great people who have like a huge experience in this sector. And those young people who volunteer with us, who come with us, get the opportunity, like an international exposure, uh, gain knowledge, and maybe they can, we plan to have like activities which could be of beneficial for them, kind of mentorship activities, like some workshops, then a series of seminars. So I think it's going to be a two-way, and we are, as you mentioned, we are in our early careers, so we are also learning. So if we meet someone senior, so we also get like a lot of knowledge and a lot to make this possible. So I think it's beneficial for both of us, being the founders and being the core members of the team, and the people who get attached to us. And yeah, I think the platforms has such a power to benefit both people. And now, as Monzima was also mentioning, we are very much like there is abundance of platforms now, but they are all are useful, and it is creating such a good awareness. And the usage of social media along with these platforms are, I think, that's such a good combination. I think in my time I was not that much aware of LinkedIn, but now LinkedIn is such a different workplace. You can get to know, you can interact, you can network without being having any network. You can do wonders on LinkedIn, these kind of platforms. So I think it's a good combination.
And by the way, I found you people out from LinkedIn only. So
Yeah.
that's
So
it's
I
a,
think the world is changing. Yeah.
is changing, and it makes a huge difference if we are using the platform. Because in our Wiki Water Resource Council also, I have been saying it to council members, platforms are good as long as we make use of it and we offer something to it. Otherwise it is it's of no use. So it's like a multi-wheel vehicle which has to be moved by everybody, something like this. So, Monzima, what is your take on this? And I know you have been also part of some more active platforms. Over to you.
I actually echo Tabeer, but something that I actually want, beyond the networking aspect of it, something that I actually want to add to it is how platforms help people shape their personalities. I used to be a very shy student in my undergrad. I would oftentimes not respond in my classes. And then I started participating in Model United Nations. And then right now I am part of Environmental Peace Building Association. We have Water Peace Building Association. And then throughout these years, what these platforms have helped me understand is how these are safe space for me to talk about things that interest me, right?
Yeah.
And then through these safe spaces, I learn, I interact, I network, and it's both way networking. For example, I bumped into this network on LinkedIn when I was looking for people who takes an interest on the same issues that I do in the South Asian region. And then through Meghna, through Tabeer, through you, I have been hearing about all of these opportunities, people who I can interview for my dissertation, people who I can take this network to, and then tell them whether you would be willing to, come and speak to us and our youth, so that, people also get to learn from your knowledges. So it gives you a sort of exposure. It shapes your personality. It gives your interest a more concrete form. At the same time, it helps other people in the sense that through our network, we're trying to collate all of those opportunities that are available for youth around the world, be it a grant project opportunity, be it a conference presentation opportunity, and we're giving it to the youth people where, they can just like take advantage of those resources that are already out there, because again, there are so many platforms that you can oftentimes get lost into what's being given to you, and it's very important for us to take advantage of these existing resources. So the way we are thinking about it is how we can make it both ways for both the youth and us and the experts, and be kind of like the bridge that offers them that sort of safe space for their interest to go.
Very well articulated, both of you. So before I ask my penultimate and final question, we have a wonderful friend here, a development professional, and also very well known in India, who has established Make Pine Abhiyan, which is initiative in English word, Abhiyan. And his name is Eklavya Prasad. He's based in Jharkhand, but again, like many water professionals with a roller skates traveling all over. And he has a wonderful question which he had posed me, so I have invited him to ask you. So, Eklavya, you have been hearing the girls so far, so please come on board and pose your question to them. I'm not revealing what you were going to ask them, but just briefly, Tabeer is from Pakistan, based in Sweden, if you had not attended from the beginning. And Monzima is from Bangladesh and also doing her PhD in Washington, DC. So just to briefly tell you. Over to you, Eklavya. Please pose your question here.
Thank you, Mansi. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes.
Go ahead.
First of all, thanks, Mansi, for sending the link and reminding me about this amazing deliberation. And huge congratulations to both the speakers, because I joined late, so I've been hearing them. And it's interesting to hear points which are beyond rhetoric.
Yeah.
So that was quite insightful for me. My question is, and this is actually coming from the fact that we work in the field, and what we tend to see is the policy paralysis or insensitivity towards actual and realistic inclusion. And when I talk about inclusion, I specifically am trying to focus on women. When we see that they are the managers, and they are not only managers, they're not only water managers, but they are also managers of the disaster related to water, whether be it floods or drought. So in such kind of a scenario, when you see that there is a political paralysis or huge insensitivity, and the inclusion is just talked as a mere formality, how do you both see this, and what best could be done in order to ensure that the managers are the ones who are included and they are become the leaders as far as the grassroots are concerned? Thank you, and all the very best.
Thank you, Eklavya. We go the same order. Tabeer, please go ahead. Tabeer? Yeah, go ahead. No, you are on mute.
Now, is it working?
Or now it's working. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think now it's working. Sorry for the glitch. It was just unmuted and unmuted. Yeah, so I think the women, when it comes to the women managers and then becoming the leaders, so women have that capacity because they are, even at the local level, these are the ones that are very directly linked with the issues related to the water as compared to the men. So they have the capacity and they can lead in a way, and they know the regional or maybe the local context. So they have like more information, and as they are the more observant of these kind of issues, so they have the power, and that's where we need the policies and everything to be like more inclusive, and to have like that perspective, the local perspective that a woman can bring to the platform. So, I mean, that brings the need of the women leaders and the women managers to be part of these decision-making processes, because they bring, I think, the more local knowledge as compared to the men, because these are the people who are more affected from the issue and as compared to men, but still they don't have that power to make decisions, but they are the ones who are going to be affected through those decisions. So that brings them, like we should bring them to the forefront, and to give them the power to lead these kind of decision making when it comes to water.
Yeah, very well put. And actually, this is like a chicken and egg situation in case of women. If I may just add a little bit, Eklavya, because the fact that we are working here from my team from Wiki Water Resource Council on the fact that if we really talk more about women water professionals who are out there who already have a voice, little bit voice, if not all, and if they get connected with the women on the ground, I think it will be much faster and much more heard than what is right now. We as women also we have to get connected at both levels, at policy and grassroots. So over to you, Monzima. What's your experience out there? Because I did a good interesting research work a year ago in Bangladesh, and I was so overwhelmed looking at the powerful women on the ground.
Yes. So thank you very much, Eklavya, for your question. And I completely agree. Not just women inclusion, but when it comes to integrating local knowledge, we are really seeing how there is a lack of concrete action. So participation is like mere representation is not adequate participation. It's something that I have been observing. So me and Meghna just went to World Water Forum, and this is also something that we have observed there, like how even certain regions are underrepresented. And there was an issue with the People's Forum, even at the World Water Forum, where People's Water Forum who would bring in local and indigenous knowledge to the platform. So this is very common and increasingly because I study multi-level governance. So this is something that we often talk about. How do we make sure that the multiple stakeholders who we are bringing into the table are actually in the equal footing, because there is always a language issue. So many of the people who are basically sitting there, oftentimes because of lack of interpreters or translators, cannot participate adequately, even though they are physically present there. So their voice is not appropriately being heard. So how do we make sure that their local knowledge is adequately taken into consideration in the policy paralysis that you were talking about? And I think what Mansi just mentioned is it's actually a fascinating idea, because I was thinking as Tabeer was speaking, and I think there lies the importance of the bridge. If the local managers of water cannot come to the top process, we have to bring those women leaders sitting in the top process to the ground and let them have those conversations, going back to the point that I was making about being observant. So really connecting back to the ground and being those actors who the world needs, who water managers need. And to be honest, in my experience, I have always seen that women who are leaders, they're so very honest about every perspective. It's not rhetoric. Most of the time you talk to them, be it from a food and agriculture organization, be it from water aid, like they are just so fascinatingly honestly sharing their experiences, which is unlike men. Most of the time they are very much surrounded or in the bubble of those rhetorics. So I guess women really needs to be put into the right places. They needs to have those proper networks, and then we were probably going to see a changed future very soon, because we're always talking about bringing those connections that are so very important.
So thank you, Monzima and Tabeer. I would like to add a little bit further here, Eklavya, because your question is quite intriguing. We have also started discussing women in water with men as well, because that is very important. Because if we, as women, if we keep talking to each other, we are not able to make the other people hear. It's extremely important that we convey the thoughts, because after all, it's not a competition between men and women. It's the whole idea of feministic approach to the planet, or the masculine approach to the planet. And women can be masculine and many men are feministic. I mean, some of the great world leaders have been feministic in their approach to social reforms and ecological restorations. So Eklavya, I mean, I think I actually feel like inviting it as a series with why not have more and more men talking about this very idea of gender inclusiveness, or for that matter, talking about reaching a point in the society when we don't have to talk about gender and we have a water crisis, which is good enough crisis. and we are a set of human beings, and we start talking about it, working together. And I think it's high time that woman takes that lead again, because if any reform has to come, it has to again come from the woman. So maybe your network, Tabeer and Monzima, your network, Wiki Water Resource Council, we go out to more men and talk about it, what it is to have a woman colleague with you, what it is to work with women, what it is to have a woman leader. I mean, let us talk about it. Maybe men will have more acceptance and accommodation for women about it, you know. I think as unless and until we reach out to them to hear it out, and I think they are equally sensible people. It is just that because we are living in that setup that it just gets unnoticed, you know. If you go to a panel and you see all women, and if you talk about women in water, you will not find many people attending or interested. But if the same panel is having all men and talking about water and technology, you will find many people hearing. So these are like prejudices we carry along with us as part of patriarchy. And for that to come over, we need again both genders and all other genders. So it has to be gender inclusive approach of looking at water. So I hope, Eklavya, we can start a new series on getting best of the men and minds to talk about women and water. Why not? Let us try to do that. What do you think? Let me.
Absolutely. It's a brilliant idea.
Okay, so I'm going to invite you to be the host of the session, and I'm going to facilitate the process. So I'm catching you right here. Thank you. Let me ask you the final question, and then we can wrap it up the session. And it's a very simple question. As we have discussed in the beginning, that we actually do not have many water professionals, especially the younger generation are not getting so much interested. So the last question is to the young people, your peer group, message to the younger generation, what it is to be in the water sector, how satisfying it is or how challenging it is. Should they join, should they not join? What will be your message to them? That's the first part of the question. And second part of the question is what simple things they should keep in mind to engender the water sector. You know, like for us, it took 20 years to reach a point where we can be heard with our fellow peer group people or fellow male water workers. Maybe we can change that 20 years to 2 years. So what kind of, message you have for all, not for only for men, but boys and girls, what do they should do to engender the water sector? So we go Tabeer again, and then we end up with Monzima.
Yeah, I think as we mostly talk about climate change, I mean, water is very less talked about, but the main message that I would really want to give is that when we talk about climate change, so I think without water, we cannot talk about climate change. So I think the world is moving, the young boys and girls, they are doing everything related to the climate change. All the focus is around the reducing the emissions and making it a better place, a good environment, saving the biodiversity, these kind of things. So this is what I really want to say, like they should opt for water, like it's such an important component of climate change if they are focused on saving this environment. So they cannot do it without being in the water sector. So it has much to deliver because we know that any disaster is it either a drought like a too little water or it is a flood like a too much water. So mostly it's all about water. So that is the first component that I would really like to mention here, that it is a very important and very field that is very, I think, compulsory or kind of mandatory to be part of. And there are a lot of good opportunities in this sector as well. So this is what I really wanted to say, like, because we have been listening to all the climate change things and the people are very much involved in it. So it shouldn't be without water, and we need to focus, like our focus should be on these two things. And then actually I totally forgot you the second part of the question.
How to engender the water sector? What should the youth keep in mind? Very simple things they should keep in mind so that slowly engendering becomes a natural process.
Yeah, I think water crisis is the main important thing why we bring like the gender so much. First of all, they need to think about the water sector, and when they start thinking about the water crisis, so it's very obvious they came to know that who are more vulnerable to water. So maybe they can try to focus more efforts towards like the women, if they are not letting women the leaders, but still they need to think that the main priority is water crisis, then it becomes like which gender is more affected. So we have to first unite on the topic, like water crisis is the real-time issue. Then it is disappropriately affecting women. So we need to focus more on women, and we bring those women in the decision-making processes as much as they are affected by this crisis. So this is how slowly, but I think it's not like impossible to do. And with now, we can easily see that the youth are enough, they are educated, and they are already on the same path, that they are already doing their efforts, and it's like it's in a good progress already. Yeah.
Thank you, Tabeer. Thank you so much, Monzima.
I would first of all echo what Tabeer was saying about climate change. It's just so deeply connected to everything that we talk about water that we really need to understand that. And on top of that, I would add is within the water sector, there is a tendency to silo the different issues. But then we really have to understand that water is very connected. There are different water uses, but you can't talk about one type of water uses without taking into consideration the needs of a different type of water users. Really going back to the very first example that I talked about, my early childhood, where, like one neighborhood extracting more groundwater led to water crisis for the other neighborhood. So really taking into consideration that we need a very integrated approach when it comes to water management and understanding of how water management works. And for that reason, I think the youth really should push the policymakers to carve out a space for them. I know there are youth parliaments that exist for water, and we really have to mainstream this as part of the policy process. And I think going back to the point that even Eklavya was talking about, how do we deal with the policy paralysis? And to deal with the policy paralysis, we have to break free of how we understand mainstream diplomacy, how mainstream policy making happens. We really have to create more concrete systematic space for youth parliamentarians, youth voices, women voices in the policy process. And as long as we are not stepping into the policy process very systematically, we are not going to see the changes that we want to see. So I guess my suggestions would be really breaking free of the siloing of the water issue and really stepping into the policy space, pushing and creating that space for themselves, be it through track 2 diplomacy, track 3 diplomacy. There are so many different ways to do it. And even this platform can be one of those spaces through which we start influencing the policy process gradually. So really like trying to do that. And about the second question, like how do we engender this? I think the very first thing is to change the mindset and understand it's everyone's problem. Water problem is everyone's problem, and it's not just women's problem. Sanitation is everyone's problem. It has nothing to do with just women. Everyone's voice is needed there. I know in some of our countries, it's so common to think of social welfare, water as women issues, but these are not women issues. These are human rights issues. These are everyone's issues. So really changing that mindset. And for that, we probably need to take advantage of social media so much more. We can create different types of videos where it shows how women, children, and men are all equally affected by climate change and water scarcity, and really push the young generation to think about these problems differently. And I think we also have a very important role to play there in, pushing them to think about these problems very differently. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful interaction we had today. I am done with my questions, but if you have any question for me, this is the time to ask me. Otherwise, I do. Thanks. Would you like to ask me any question? Okay.
I don't think so for now, but we have a lot of questions for you in the future.
We have a lot of questions to discuss in future. And thank you so much for your time as well as patience to really have the session started a little bit late for some internet glitches from Meghna's side. And really, it was an enlightening interaction for me, and also getting a perspective of the region more than, outside India as well. So thank you, Monzima Haque and Tabeer Riaz for this sharing your heart out, and let me put it that way. And also, I feel a little bit sorry for Meghna Chakkraborty for not being able to stay over the entire session, but I'm sure I'm going to get her in the next session also. I really felt the conversation like flowing like water, and I hope you felt the same and enjoyed the conversation. In the coming Monday Munching Musing with Women for Water, we are going to have more members from South Asia, Young Women in Water. And the next session is going to be on next Monday, of course, and that is 10th of June. And same time, 5 p.m. IST. And may you girls remain an inspiration to more younger people, and also people like us who have been who have traversed the water path. We are grateful to have learned about your water endeavors, and I hope that you are going to really take it much further and stronger than my generation did. And I see that is definitely going to happen, and it is going to be faster to engender the water sector also. May you also continue your water activities and keep us posted, because it's also a concern that many people, young people who join the water sector, and because it is challenging in terms of career, it also gets, sidelined at some point in time. So I do hope that water sector becomes a mainstream sector like any other, preferred sectors. We shall continue with our Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water every Monday at 5 p.m. and look forward to learning more and more from more women from the water sector. So for a couple of weeks, we are going to have discussion from youth from Asia, but we are still continuing with our Indian women in the water sector. But we are open to invite more women to talk about it, as well as now we are also discussing with more men who work in this sphere and who are also concerned about this gender inequality. You may please follow our social media platform for regular updates. And for now, please take care of yourself. And thanks again to all the participants also here and as well as in YouTube. And we look forward to each other in next Monday probably. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.